Welcome back, everyone, to the Jerry exclusive podcast where we delve into the mind of extraordinary individuals. A lot of time when I say that intro, a lot of people always say, "Oh no, Jerry, I'm not an extraordinary individual. Stop." But I have to honestly say that even though we don't know each other like that, like what I've seen from what you've accomplished has been really like impressive. Like your experience and your expertise in certain areas and the dedication that you have at such a young age is something that makes me see you as an extraordinary individual. So also thank you for being so active. Like when I messaged you, you already had things you wanted to say and things you wanted to contribute to the podcast. So I want to start by saying thank you for that. And before we jump in, I just want to ask you, like, how's your day been, or how's your day gonna be? What have you got planned for the day and stuff like that?
So today I went to an event in Cambridge on working on projects other than my degree. I did something on modelling regulatory sandboxes and the effects that they would have on innovation. And we'll later today be doing to a second degree dinner, which is a type of dinner meant to maximize the number of new people you met by organising chains such that each person only knows two others there.
Oh, amazing. That sounds like it was very, packed, which is obviously really impressive as well. So it seems like obviously you've had a busy day today. You've been doing a lot of work. But what we usually like to do, I've only been doing it for one podcast now, but I'm trying to get into the habit of getting like a routine in my podcast. But what I usually want to start doing at the start of the podcast is doing a Never Have I Ever. You've played Never Have I Ever before?
No.
You haven't played before? That's completely fine. So I'll explain the rules to you. So basically, I'll just say a statement. For example, I'll say, "Never have I ever eaten rice," or something, and then you have to reply by either saying, "I have," or "I have not," which that's basically the whole premise of the game. And I usually have these little like custom made cards that say "I have" or "I have not" on them, but I didn't bring them today. So instead of saying "I have," just do a thumbs up, or if you have not, do a thumbs down. Are those clear? The rules are clear, right? All right. So the first statement is, never have I ever Googled myself. You've never?
Oh, sorry, other way around.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I feel like everyone has Googled themselves at some point in time. Even if it's just to check the pictures that you have online and stuff like that. I started doing that since I was like year 8, and then it just spiraled into me Googling my friends and my teachers and everyone, just like researching all of them. But yeah, I feel like everyone does that. So, second question, never have I ever met a celebrity. He wasn't really famous, but it was someone who I didn't know was as famous when I met them. And then I searched them up on TikTok later on, and then I realized that they were famous. I forgot their name. But you haven't met a celebrity yet. Do you want to meet one someday, or you don't really mind?
I've met quite a few famous economists. I'm unsure how celebrity is defined in this context. But...
Okay. Are they mainly economists based in the UK or Americans?
Mostly Americans.
Oh, mostly American. Because I was asking that because I've been doing some reading as well because I think we do the same course. I do economics and international finance. You do economics, I'm guessing, right? Yeah. So I've been doing some reading as well on economics and stuff, and following some famous or some popular economists. And I don't know if you've heard of him, Robert Shiller. The American economist, Nobel Prize winner. But yeah, it's just something I wanted to add in there. Maybe you met him before. I just wanted to see. But yeah, it's actually interesting that you've met a couple of famous economists already. What economists have you met?
So I met Michael Spence yesterday. He did. He's a Nobel Prize winner. He did the early work on education signaling in the 1970s under Kenneth Arrow. Essentially, the basic idea here is that there's two possible reasons why I, as an employer, might want to hire somebody because they're educated. I might want to hire them because that education has actually boosted how many skills they have, or I might want to boost it because the university went to a lot of effort in its selection process, and it's just like actually very hard to complete a degree. And so as a result, if someone's completed a degree and the university like went to the effort of selecting them, I will like update my assessment of that candidate's prospects. Now, the reason why the second effect is interesting is because under the second effect, people will signal too much. Because because if you imagine that it's like standard example here is that imagine that there was some tower and you walk into it, it will remove 4 years of your life. You can only walk into it if your IQ is over 130. Then it's the case that employers will like pay you to walk into that tower, and so you rationally may do it.
Yeah.
In reality, most empirical evidence is that education is still mostly human capital. Like one review I saw was that it was like maybe about 70% human capital, at least for the areas which we have more control over people's choices in like secondary school and sixth form.
Yeah.
But it's still the case that it means that the optimal subsidy on education is lower than what you'd naively calculate.
Wow, that's really interesting. That aspect of like education is really hard. So I guess we need to almost cut them some slack, or I guess we need to raise their status. Look at them as having accomplished something that's really hard, and that's enough to get them in the door. It's almost like a selection bias almost. These group of people who have got through this door, automatically we perceive them as having maybe something superior to those that haven't got through this door. Do you ever feel like there might be some unintentional faults or downfalls of looking at it in that way? Because I mean, from the way I'm looking at it, maybe potentially someone might have done like a degree apprenticeship or something that really boosted their human capital in a specific skill. And do you ever feel like maybe employers might look at that unfavorably just because it's not the university route, or do you never look at it that way?
So like the reason why employers do it is ultimately if somebody else has gone to a lot of effort at evaluating somebody, I can skim on just how much I myself will spend on it. This does mean that it's the case that if somebody did complete something less prestigious, then for the early part of their career, employers will not hire them enough, and they do bear some cost to that. But this is also the reason why the degree you have tends to matter like very, very little after about 10 years into your career. People like after that just look at your experience, because then we actually can like get some like plausible measure of your human capital by what positions have you had, what did your previous employers say about you, etc.
Yeah. Well, that's actually very interesting. So like it's really interesting. I get to talk to you about certain principles and get to hear your thoughts as well, and all the things that you've learned, and get to go back and forth. So I'm definitely looking forward to doing more of that, as we go on with the podcast, hearing your thoughts, and you're also written some publications as well. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing about the background of some of those and seeing how you came up with them. So before we get there though, let's finish the never have I ever questions. The third question is, never have I ever read an entire book in one day. I think it was I forgot what book it was, but it wasn't like a standard big book. It was probably like 200 pages. But do you remember what book you read in a day?
Yes, I read all of this yesterday.
Oh, British Foreign Policy on the Touch. Oh, amazing. Oh, wow. What was it? Was it one of your favorite books? Or like, how did you find it?
Oh, it was something which I was meant to read for my course. But I found it very, very interesting. The most interesting section, I think, was the one on how the nuclear weapons program of Britain was selected over time.
Oh, wow. That's really... I'm guessing that's very classified. Like, there's probably some details that they had to blur out.
The thing is that the missiles which the government orders in 1982, the Trident D5 missiles, are still in service. So much of the details about them are highly classified. But we do know things about like how much they cost. We know a lot about the Polaris missiles that preceded them. And so like the interesting feature here is that brief history of the policy here is that Britain has immediately after World War II, Britain's excluded from the American nuclear cooperation. It then independently pursues a nuclear program, Operation Hurricane and Operation Grapple, which are the first standard conventional and hydrogen nuclear bombs, respectively, in 51 and 57. And there's also a panoply of delivery systems. So like aircraft, ballistic missiles, etc. All of this is just like far, far too expensive. In 1961, Howard Macmillan purchases Polaris missiles from the US. The problem is that in those days, submarine-launched missiles were like short-range, unreliable, and highly, highly inaccurate, and you couldn't actually fit many warheads on each one. It was the case that the entire British nuclear arsenal was just 32 warheads that spread across 4 submarines that were like highly inaccurate. We probably would have been able to get a few on Moscow if we fired all of them there, but like not much more than that. Trident, when it was purchased, raised the total to about 200 warheads that could be launched from much greater distance to much higher accuracy.
Wow.
The cost was like truly, truly exorbitant at the time, £10 billion. And now so I'm like just like quickly estimate this. Like I think the pound has lost like since the early Thatcher period, it's probably like more than half, maybe even 75% of its value. Yeah. And the economy is like consistently grown by like 2 or 3%. So like the economy was like probably like not much above half the real size. So this would be this was like probably roughly about 4% of GDP. So double the entire defense budget today for like a single armament. Yeah.
And was all of that funding coming straight out of people's pockets, out of people's taxes?
So it had stuff on the defense budget as well. It had peaked at 11% during the Korean War in the 50s. It then gradually fell, reaching a trough of 4.7% in 1977. Defense spending then rises to 5.4% of GDP. But like Trident is like actually mostly paid for after Thatcher, which is like actually one of the main attractions of it politically, because Trident D5 would arrive later. That also meant that the cost could be entirely deferred. It did not have to come out of the defense budget today. Yeah. The reason for the defense budget rise was actually because the government insisted on maintaining an overly large navy, because it wasn't politically possible to cut it after the Falklands War, despite the fact that it was much larger than was actually for Britain's requirements at the time.
Yeah, that's very interesting how they could use something like that as like a political advantage, you know, like you said, kind of like pushing the cost or deferring the cost into the future, as you know, making it seem like, oh, we're not really spending that much money, but when in reality you are going to be spending that much money in the future. What's that book called again? I might read it like later on.
Foreign Policy Under Thatcher.
Foreign Policy Under Thatcher. Oh, amazing. I'm definitely gonna read that. Definitely gonna help me with my economic studies as well. Last question. Never have I ever pronounced POV as POV. Do you know what POV is?
I've heard of it. I don't think I've ever said it.
Yeah, I mean, I pronounced it as POV before. It's just like, I don't know if you watch TikTok, but there's TikToks where it's like POV, and then you say something that's relatable or something. I used to think instead of POV, you pronounced it as POV. I realized that it's POV. And I just felt really stupid for some reason, because everyone was saying POV and I was saying POV, but it's just a silly little thing I wanted to add in there. But yeah, that's it for the Never Have I Ever question. Next time, I'm definitely going to make sure to bring the little cards. It just makes it much more fun. But yeah, it's definitely, like I said, it's very educational just listening to you talk. And like, I feel like the conversations that we're going to have are going to be very productive, especially like I said at the start. I feel like you're a very dedicated individual, especially for your age. You know, you're doing a lot of things. You're moving into different sectors and learning and, you know, improving your knowledge in so many different faculties and sectors, which is very inspirational. And I'm pretty sure a lot of the people watching, a lot of the audience members can take a lot from this podcast. So I kind of want to start with just the basics, like your university, your school background and stuff like that. And before I ask you a question on that, I just want to say it is absolutely insane that you had 4 A stars at A level. I want you to walk me through that. What was your preparation, or like where was your mindset at? Did you set those goals or not, or was it just something that you'd been working towards for a long time, or like how did you really come out with 4 A stars? I really want to know.
So like it was more like 3.5 because one of them was an EPQ. But the EPQ, I just wrote most of the substance of the EPQ over like a 2-week period at the beginning of the academic year, and then like added infrequently to it afterwards. In terms of the subjects, I just did all of the past papers for the subject over like a 2-month or so period before the exams.
Okay.
And
so you just followed like a standard routine. You never did anything that was like really special. You just locked down and did the basics, just past paper questions and all of that kind of stuff. Oh, wow, impressive. Did you ever like have a progression? Was it always A stars throughout like your mocks and your exams, or did you like maybe start from an A or start from a B or something like that?
I was stuck on an A in physics for a while.
Okay.
But yeah, because I was like somewhat struggling with the style of explanations they wanted, because I was much more familiar with addressing it from a mathematical perspective. But yes, they just like some sufficient quantity of like flashcards and so forth did like give the necessary information for that.
Okay, nice. And also I want to touch up a little bit on your entry into Cambridge University, which is obviously what the top 3 universities in the world, so that's very impressive. I want you to just kind of tell the audience a little bit about your journey, your process into entering, from your TMUA exams to any other entry requirements that you had to meet, and how you prepared for those, how you executed those, and how they all went around.
So I did the TMUA in October, I believe, and I did like the past couple of TMUA exams for that, and then scored reasonably well on it, and then I then completed a second personal statement for Cambridge describing why I wanted the specific college, and then I had my interview in early December, which was like some combination of both economics and maths problems, with the maths problems focused on that, most applicable for economics, of course. And after this, I was then received an offer January 25th, and received after that information regarding like the required entry grades, which was 2 A stars and an A. There was like for economics no penalization for the fact that I had not studied economics at A level.
Okay. So, wait, you didn't study economics?
No, my school only permitted you to study further maths and physics for A level, and you could study either economics or computer science for AS. But
okay. Oh wow, that really caught me off guard, because I would think, I guess as long as you have maths, that's enough, right, to get into economics. Oh, okay. Well,
yes, they only care about maths. The people with economics, they had exactly the same offer. They did not care about whether it was economics, physics, or history of art. It would be, just like they care about maths and further maths only.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's really interesting. I never really thought that it could just be maths, but I guess that's what universities want. I found what you said very thoughtful, the way you laid it all out, from like your TMUA to your interview. And about the interview as well, I'm really interested. Was it more of like a conversational interview, or was it more like an interrogation, in terms of where they just asking you a lot more questions and just expecting you to kind of tell them answers and tell them the theory of maths and economics or physics or whatever they were asking about?
So the rough model of the interviews seemed to be that they were asking questions for which they expected 2 or 3 sentence responses. It was not very conversational. It was very much like I am like not meant to give too many details as to like the specific substance, etc. But it was not in conversational style.
Okay.
The maths part was though.
Okay.
But the economics part was.
Okay. Great, amazing. Because actually, obviously, I'm very proud of like the fact that you've been so successful. Something to be proud about, and I feel like it's very inspirational, especially because a lot of people, most students actually don't get to, even those who apply, aren't fortunate enough to get accepted. And I'm actually one of those students. I applied to Cambridge as well. I did the TMUA as well, but unfortunately I didn't progress into the interview stage, which is why I say it's very impressive and very inspirational to me and to people who are watching. To see someone who actually got through that stage and who was successful in that. So yeah, obviously I want to ask you a little bit more as well about your work experience and the things that you've been up to, because I feel like, and I'm sure you can agree, in the modern day and age, universities and just jobs in general aren't just looking for grades, they're looking for experience as well, which is something that you have a lot of. And I really want to touch up a little bit on some of your work experiences, which I found were very unique. And one of those is the Singapore team coach or team leader. I really want to know, like, what was that about? Did you have to go out to Singapore? Like, how did you get about to doing that?
Mm. Yeah, so the International Economics Olympiad is like fairly new. Only 55 countries participate. And so Singapore, which only has a population of 6 million, had not previously submitted a team. I had met the person at a math camp the previous year who decided to organize the Singapore team. And so he requested that I be the coach for that team. I designed many of the questions which we used to assess them and did all of the marking in order to select the team.
Wow. That's really impressive. Was it just you marking? Was it like just a bunch of papers, just you marking people's questions, or like did you get help as well?
For some of the section, it was a multi-stage selection process, and I like ran all of the later sections.
Oh, okay. Okay, nice. And did you have to
so I did all of the marking for those. Yeah.
Okay, wow, impressive. Did you also have to like travel out to Singapore to do that, or did the team come here?
Neither. We just communicated by like standard software.
Oh, okay. Oh,
yeah, nice. It's like the Singapore team did not decided not to travel to Greece due to the expense, which was where the Olympiad was held, and so they competed virtually anyway.
So. Yeah. Actually, speaking about Olympiads, that kind of reminds me of I think I know I have a friend who participated in a mathematical Olympiad. That's a competition, right? Mathematical Olympiad. Yeah, I think I think she goes to Cambridge actually. Do you know of Lizzie Reed? She does math.
Yes, she went to my school, in fact.
Oh yeah, she's a maths student at Cambridge. Are you guys in the same courses and stuff like that, or what?
No, we like the maths which is taught in economics is like strictly relating to optimization and statistics.
Oh, okay.
Which in maths is like covered much later in the course, instead they do more abstract topics like groups.
Okay, wow. Speaking about maths as well, I can see that you were a maths tutor like maybe a couple of years ago. Can you just tell me a little bit of like how that went and how you got into that as well? Did they like need you to do like a like certain test to get into it? Because I find that for younger students it's slightly harder to get into tutoring, because sometimes you might get underestimated. They might just look at you as a young child or whatever. So like, can you just enlighten us a little bit on how the process was in getting into that, being a maths tutor, and also how you found it? Like, was it enjoyable or was it too stressful?
So how it worked was that the sixth form which I went to, King's Maths School, was in central London. So there was another school like 3 or 4 minute walk away, which was a secondary school and needed maths tutors for the year 11s. And so they just hired students from the specialist maths school I went to in order to provide that tuition.
Okay.
And it would take the form of, we would review some problem sets which they would be given in advance of the tuition, and then we would guide them through them, like with a group of like 3 or 4 students per student teacher. Because we like did not have a uniform and so forth, we like looked distinctly older than them, and I think that made any issues relating to like them viewing us as very young like non-existent.
Okay. Well, that
they did like, yeah, they would like generally they like generally were like acting very similar, I think, to in a classroom normally.
Okay. Well, that's obviously very encouraging, because sometimes, it's very unfortunate for a lot of people. They get undermined or like, just pushed to the side because, oh, you're young, you don't have the qualifications or whatever, when they actually do have the qualifications and the knowledge to tutor in that subject. And also, just as an extension to my question, like, did you find it, was it something that helped you, like, with your studies? Did you find it enjoyable or not?
I found it very interesting to build up a model of, because maths is in terms of understanding, a very linear subject. It is very interesting to like understand the distribution of where did people fall off on that train. Where is the like point at which their education, at which they like started having serious issues with learning? Because like with maths, it will like compound very, very quickly. If you don't understand fractions, then it is like, much, much harder to do anything further than that.
Yeah.
And so interesting to like improve my model of where people stop understanding, and so where can educational resources be best directed at what age, etc., in order to try to improve maths attainment.
I've never really heard anyone put it that way, because I think teachers as a whole, they kind of approach problems in a very isolated manner. Like you said, if you have a problem with fractions, they'll just try and help you with fractions, which obviously there's no problem with that. But like you said, sometimes some of these problems compound and they might stem from you not knowing something else. So I find it really interesting that you had the insight to kind of step back and be like, wait, sometimes it's not just about this one problem. Maybe this thing started compounding from multiple months ago. Maybe they dropped off, they just stopped understanding multiple months ago, and kind of trying to track back and see where that drop off happened and see how you can help them. And like I said, that's a really innovative way of looking at it. I've never really heard anyone look at it in that way. Is there is there anyone who is your maths mentor, like someone who really inspired you or taught you in terms of maths, who you look up to?
Yes. So Rachel, she knows my dad through work. She was like able to provide a lot of maths tutoring, and was also able to give like lots of Olympiad books with problems along those lines, etc. as well, which I like strongly enjoyed working through 2 years ago. This is because her daughter had like gone to the IMO twice, and so she did a lot of resources she could share with me, and that was extremely helpful.
Yeah, it's obviously always helpful, and I'm guessing Rachel is like a family friend, or
yeah.
He's very helpful when you can have someone who's close to the family help you. It's not like they necessarily want anything in return. They're just doing it out of the goodness of their heart. So yeah, it's very beneficial when you can have someone in your corner like that. And before we move on, I also want to ask you, out of all those different experiences, the plethora of different things that you've done, which is a massive list, by the way, what one, or maybe two, I'll give you one or two. What one or two experiences would you say were like the most beneficial to you, not just in terms of professionally or academically, but also in terms of like, what ones did you really like, deep down, when you came out of that thinking like, oh wow, that was a really great experience, I'd love to do that again?
So both of the times I attended ESPA, which is a math camp in Oxford that runs every year.
Okay.
In 2022 and 2023. Yes, those were experiences which like were both like extremely useful from a professional perspective in terms of getting connections, and also extremely, and like suggesting what programs to apply to in future and similar things. And also like there was like large qualitative differences in my mindset after both programs. So I think that qualifies under both of the characteristics you listed.
Nice. Well, now I want to delve into your publications. I'm guessing you have around 2 or 3 publications so far. Like, if you don't mind, do you mind just like outlining, just saying the title of each of them, and then maybe we'll kind of delve into them individually, like the different titles for the different publications that you have?
Sure. So I have Optimizing for Our Openness Level, which is a study which it estimates what would the revenue be if the UK government decided to auction visas for employers for the employees they wanted to bring here. I have A Home for Growth, which is a study of the effects of if the UK government allowed all houses to be built up to 8 stories rather than 2, regardless of location, what would the effects be on GDP growth of that? And then I also have which is a piece that I wrote a few months ago with Jason Housenloy on if we were to pay Russian soldiers to defect, what would the results be? How much would it cost to end the war?
Wow, impressive. I feel like every time you have a publication, I'm guessing it probably takes you a long time to come up with a title, because those titles, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but those titles really, like, they're very unique. They really, I'm guessing, encapsulate the whole idea. Meanwhile, a lot of times titles may be very limited. Maybe they talk about just one side of the study, but it seems like yours is really open and encapsulate the whole study. So, like, do you like take a lot of time to research your titles, or is it something that you just do and then just start typing on whatever you're doing?
Like the titles are usually something which I come up with after I've written the paper and just want to get it sent off as quickly as possible. So like they usually only involve 30 seconds of thought.
Oh wow. Oh, okay. Well, I was completely wrong there. Well, okay. Now I want to delve into your third publication. How did you come up with that idea, or how did you brainstorm to come up with that idea?
Yes. So this was Brian Kaplan, and who had came up with the idea only a few weeks after the war started. He gave an original proposal which would have involved European Union countries offering citizenship to Russian soldiers. This however, he didn't offer any model of how much you would actually have to pay, because he suggested giving a large cash bonus in addition to the citizenship. And so that was what we did. Which is like the first model that we're aware of like formally incentivizing defections by offering people citizenship and a monetary payment in this manner.
Oh, okay. And did you write this with Ryan Kaplan, or was it something that you did by yourself?
I did the modeling myself, and then all of and then many of the writing aspects and policy design aspects were done with Jason Housenloy.
Oh wow, impressive. And also, what does it take? And I don't just mean from an academic perspective, because obviously you have to have the academic knowledge to write a study about a certain topic. But what does it take in terms of in terms of your whole being, like in terms of motivation and discipline? How do you really almost psych yourself up, or really go from, sleeping or doing whatever to saying, you know what? Let's write a study. Let's do something. What's that transition like? What's the mechanisms behind that? What really pushes you to do that?
So usually the strategy here is that I write reviews at the end of each week and the end of each month, and so that I have plans what I am going to do every day of each week and every week of the month, and so this means that it is almost following a default. You've already written down in a document, this is what I'm going to do when, etc. And so it's just much easier to follow that schedule. So it's less a case of finding willpower, more a case of just going on the track you set yourself the previous day or the previous weekend.
So it's just discipline. You've kind of set yourself into a routine, a productive routine that gets you to where you want to get to. Yeah. I feel like that's very inspirational, because I read an article or something that said the vast majority of people don't set goals at all, and even more, never review their goals. So to hear that you're one of those in the minority who are actually constantly setting goals and constantly reviewing those goals, it might seem very normal to you, but actually for the vast majority of people, they just don't do that. They just live their day as it comes. They just wake up and they think, oh, what am I going to do today? And they just do it, which, might seem strange to you. Like, how are you just living your life like that? But I was actually one of those people as well. But after, having several mentors and, listening to certain podcasts and stuff like that, I just learned, the power of goal setting, just being able to structure your life to a certain degree. I'm someone who, I don't know, maybe you're similar. I like to kind of have things planned out. I like to have control over my time. I want to know exactly what I'm doing. I don't want to have a gap of time where I don't know what I'm doing. And so goal setting has really helped me with that. I also want to ask you, where did that, was there anyone who inspired you to do that, to set goals, or was it something that you really just started doing by yourself?
It is a common strategy which several people had mentioned, it was something which I implemented immediately after ESPA 2023. This was one of the reasons why I mentioned there was some large qualitative difference afterwards, because it resulted in me implementing some large number of productivity techniques. I would not trace any of them to some single individual. It was just a compilation of what I'd heard people say.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that as well. And also, when you are setting your goals, that whole process of kind of having a review each month and knowing what you're going to do for each day of each week of each month, and just kind of having like a list, almost like a checklist, a bullet point. Do you ever get like times where maybe you feel like you need to change a certain goal? Like maybe for this week, you have Monday, I'm going to do A, Tuesday, I'm going to do B, C, D, E, F. Do you ever feel like, you know what? Maybe I have a little bit more time on Monday, so let me just squeeze A and B into Monday. And then on Tuesday, I can do C. And then do you ever feel like you have to constantly adjust your goals? Or is it just something where you're like, you know what? This month I'm doing this. Boom, 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 boom. And then that's it.
So like the planning is like, is like not very rigid. I will like very much routinely move things about within days. The main purpose of the planning isn't to like actually say what you're going to do when. It's to force you to in advance make all of the time add up, so that you like have correct expectations about what you can do that week, and what will actually take more time, and like also have to have a correct sense not just of what can you do that week from a perspective of what's impossible, but what can you do that week from a perspective of what is like actually the maximum output you can achieve.
Yeah. Wow, it's really impressive to hear you talking about this, because a lot of people, not just our age, but older than us as well, haven't tapped into what you're doing yet, goal setting, basic things like that, which is one of the main reasons I started this podcast, obviously, to kind of spread positive and beneficial information to as many people as possible. But with that being said, let's shift over to your first ever publication. When did you write it?
It was I like wrote it over the December of year 13, and it was due to like some like issues with the with just the changes in the leadership team of the organization that was there, that then resulted in there being some delay in publication. It ended up coming out in May of 2023.
Oh, okay. So that was what, a 5-month delay in writing it?
Yes.
And publishing it. Oh, okay. Nice. And do you want to kind of touch up on how that study, in terms of the economic landscape of the UK, how that study could be scaled up to the economic landscape, and what practical uses or like implications it could have on the economy as a whole?
So how I built the study was I just like wrote a simple rational choice model for employees and for employers, and then fitted this model to observe characteristics. So people like place some non-zero value on remaining where they currently live. If it was the case there was a 1 penny wage difference between London and Birmingham, then people would not move from Birmingham to London. And so you can like fit a model using these kinds of parameters, and then you end up with a rational choice model for each for both employees and for employers. Then you can work out, well, okay, how much your employer is willing to pay for someone on the margin, given just how many people have like said they would be willing to move to the UK who don't currently live here. Okay, given this, you can then just like solve for how much revenue would be. I find that revenue would be 3% of GDP from direct visa sales in the first year alone, and the changes in migrant composition would mean that you would then get 1% of GDP in all subsequent years, simply again from selling that first batch of visas.
Yeah,
revenue would decline by year because you would eventually like actually have recruited all of the bankers, and you'd have to recruit slightly less paid jobs, and that result in the marginal value of the visa decreasing. But it's still the case that I think like the present value from the first year is 23% of GDP. Present value from like the entire program is like plausibly 50% of GDP, which is like half of the national debt. Okay. Importantly, this does assume that you converted the entire work visa program to this, though. If you added exemptions for small businesses or for regions, or you converted only part of it for other reasons, then like that would all reduce the benefits.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's very insightful and very detailed. And I just want to obviously clarify for myself here, just so I understand it better. If there was a situation where maybe you had super rich people who kind of bought up all of these visas during auctions, they auctioned really high amounts, leading to people who are obviously of a lower socio-economic status, or low income earners not being able to afford the visas. Like, what sort of consequences could that have?
So, sorry, to be clear, firms are buying visas for the employees they wanted to bring here. A
Oh,
company is saying, I want to hire a banker.
yeah.
This banker is currently in Nigeria. I would like to bring them here.
Oh, okay.
The idea of selling visas to individuals is something else I model. But for this was like the entirely separate. It would only involve the sale of like a couple hundred per year, and would only raise like in the high tens of millions of pounds per year, which is like not nothing. It's worth doing, but it's quite small.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just had to clarify because I didn't fully understand it. But yeah, do you think this is something that maybe in the near future, or maybe it's already being used by like firms across the world or the UK?
So there have been some like very beneficial moves in policy towards allowing more high skilled immigration in the UK quite recently. I don't expect this mechanism to be used too extensively, mainly because policies which are explicitly called auction or market or similar tend to poll rather badly, and so governments are reluctant to implement them. But I think that like more moderate versions of this program, so I also suggest issuing some small number of visas every year by exam, is like both politically tractable and could have like some small but non-zero impact on overall productivity.
Yeah, amazing. Well, with that being said, we're going to take another quick 2-minute break. We're going to go over to the advert and then we'll be right back.
This is what you do. Listen very carefully. Firstly, what you're going to do is go to Medium. Medium is just a blog site. Go to the blog site. If you haven't got an account, create an account right now. And follow the account called Eco Explorers. Follow that account because that's very important. Because once you follow that account, that lets me know that you followed that account. And then you're going to get even more discounts on these products. Examples of products are like spirituality books, guided meditations, crystals, and stuff about chakras. And if you're into all that stuff, this is perfect. So do it right now before we get back into the video. Let's go.
Welcome back after the break. We've been talking about your first and your last publication. I want to delve into your second publication now. How did you come about into writing that? Like, how was the planning for that and the execution for that?
So for this, I was informed about some studies which had tracked the cost of housing restrictions in the US. They found that they call Hisio and Moretti, 2019, found that the cost was some 9% of US GDP, while Durant and Puga 2019 found that it was some 25%. So I was interested, well, what are comparable figures for the UK? Because most of the indicators suggest that the housing shortage in the UK is rather worse than in the US. In 80% of US cities, it's the case there is no difference between the cost of a house and the marginal cost of construction. The housing shortage is overwhelmingly concentrated in New York and San Francisco. In Britain, those figures are like very, very much not the case at all. There are very, very few regions where the cost of constructing a house is like actually lower than the market price. So London, Birmingham, Manchester, Bristol, like all of the largest, Glasgow, all of the largest cities in the UK have prices greater than this. Yes, and so I implemented Hisio and Moretti 2019's model for the British context because Durant and Puga's model required commuting data, which was not available. I then adapted this somewhat to construct, rather than Hisio and Moretti, which were able to use data for the US, which went back to the 1960s. For Britain, the British government only starts collecting data on female earnings in the 1990s. And it does not measure female earnings before that. It does not measure jobs by region until 1997 either. And So instead, I constructed a synthetic counterfactual whereby I tried to estimate how much were the cost of construction in each region, and then suppose that we lowered house prices to that in each region.
Yeah.
And what I found was that depending on like the specific assumptions you made, you would get like real GDP growth of like somewhere between 5 and 15%.
Wow. Okay. So also speaking a little bit about the models that you come up with or you determine that you want to use. How is that process like? Because there are obviously thousands and thousands of different models which you could use to represent or analyze certain data. Like, how do you come up with the best model for whatever you're trying to represent?
So usually how a like economic model generation process will work is firstly you will just like think about the specific actors. What are their utility functions? What do they want to happen in the world? Secondly, what can those actors do? What are their response functions? And then what variables can they influence? How do they influence them? And then you try to just solve for equilibrium. Work out what the equilibrium is where each of these actors are like acting in their own naive best interests. And but with this process, once you've done this, you can then like check what your solution is, and then you need to check, well, can I actually estimate this solution? Did I rely on variables which I cannot actually get empirical data for? So, for example, I could not re-implement Dranson Puga's model because they required commuting data, which was in the British context not available.
Yeah.
And so it's like a recursive process like that. And also during, if it's the case that you can like estimate the current situation or backwards derive some parameters from it, it's okay, great. It's now you can use it to calculate the optimal situation and then again work from there.
Oh wow, I like how that's like a problem solving way of approaching it. Like you talked about, if you lack some values, maybe you can use the current model or the current situation to sort of extrapolate backward to find a similar estimate. And speaking about estimating and extrapolating, do you ever find like that when you lack certain details or values, do you ever find that it doesn't work with traditional economics? Because obviously we're taught some traditional economic theories, but do you ever find that the values and the numbers don't follow that, and maybe you have to adjust it to fit the real world? Or do you try to always keep your models in line with traditional economy? Like, for example, let's say you're talking about how firms behave, and in traditional economics we're obviously taught that firms are profit maximizers, but we know in reality that's not always true. You have not-for-profit firms. So in such an example, would you still use your traditional economic models, or do you sometimes try to maybe even create new models or try to adapt those models to like more what's going on in real life? Or do you sort of get where I'm going with this?
Yeah. So there's an important distinction here, which is that you can do like an econometric way of trying to test, is your model true? Or you can try to fit your model to data. If you fit your model to data, which is like mostly what my work so far has been about, in that case, you are essentially assuming the model holds and allowing yourself to, out of like all possible parameters, pick the one specifically which works. What this means is that your model will only be rejected if there is overwhelming evidence against it.
Yeah. As
opposed to trying to test if the model fits, which is that your model will only be accepted if we are pretty certain this is indeed the correct model.
Yeah. I can see.
Yeah.
I can see the distinction you're trying to make between like trying to fit your data to the model and trying to see if your model is right. Like I can see how sometimes that might be maybe a tough distinction to make, because obviously you don't want to just have your data fit the model. Maybe the data doesn't fit the model, but there's other times where maybe you just have to do it like that, because that's the most feasible way of going about it. And speaking about trying to fit something into something, do you ever feel like your studies don't come out the way you want them to be? Do you ever look back at a study and kind of feel like, oh, that's kind of, I have some problems with that, or that just doesn't speak the language that I wanted to speak, and maybe you look back on it and you have a lot of criticisms about it, or has every single one of your studies something that has come out and you've just been 100% satisfied with it, no criticisms at all?
So, well, there are like always ways you can make a study more deeper, and there are always assumptions you have made which it would be possible to test further or to generalize. So, for example, the paying for peace, I made some assumptions about log utility, and in reality, individuals are slightly more risk averse than this, and so I should have used those functions. For the other paper, the visa auctions paper, I could have devoted more time to trying to model what the effect of if we'd implemented visas by exam would be.
Yeah.
Etc. There are always assumptions you can generalize.
Okay. Yeah, it's nice to hear that you can kind of come from a different perspective. I feel like a lot of people they always try to find the most precise answer, and I feel like what you're saying is right to a certain degree. You can always generalize on certain things. You don't always have to find, oh, this is right, because it might not be right for every single thing. So maybe sometimes it is beneficial to generalize. So this is the last segment of the podcast, and I'm just gonna read out some statements and some questions from students who, some of them study economics, others don't. But so I'll just read out the questions, and then you just give your thoughts or give your answers on the questions. The first sort of statement, it doesn't really link to economics, but it has some links to policy and politics. So someone on Twitter said, blue subscribers should be the only ones that can vote in policy-related polls. We actually have skin in the game. So basically, I guess what he's trying to say is people who have the blue tick on Twitter should be able to vote in policy affairs with what goes on with Twitter and the management of Twitter. Do you feel like, from an economic standpoint, that's something which is positive for firms to have their consumers, those who obviously pay for an exclusive service, to have such a big say in how they manage their day-to-day operations?
So firms are generally modeled as profit maximizing. That is as you mentioned, not the case for every single firm, but for Twitter it is some reasonable first approximation. And as a result of this, because Twitter will be a more typical firm, and so as a result of this, is it the case that what will be optimal for the consumers of a firm is always optimal for the firm itself? And the answer here will be probably not, because the consumers would benefit if a firm made zero profit and instead just put it all into lower prices. While, of course, or in Twitter's case, whatever increased quality of service would mean in this context, so whatever combination of fewer server outages, is more more detailed moderation, etc. And so the result of this is that it would perhaps make sense for such polls to be held as on an indicative basis, but to entirely run Twitter's policy on them would not be in its interest.
Great answer.
Or not be in its owner's interest.
Yeah, great answer. This one's from a student studying economics in year 13, and they're basically asking, how do I, because obviously it's something that you have done, how do I get into university to study economics if I'm only doing maths? Is there something extra that you have to do to kind of get an advantage over those who are already studying economics in year 13?
So the economics course will not give you that much additional information by the time the interviews occur. It is possible to research some substantial number of other things which people who are doing A-level economics will not know, but will be very helpful for interviews. So these are ensuring you're familiar with the Solo model of economic growth, some behavioral economics, some game theory, and and in micro the concept of utility function and utility maximization and similar. And like, if you are familiar with these, that will be that will be considerably more helpful than like studying A-level economics would have actually given you.
Yeah, nice. That is some great advice. I hope everyone can take that on board, and whoever needs it, whoever asks that question could definitely benefit from that. And I usually start off the podcast with this, but we started with a never have I ever. But what I basically want to ask is, what I usually ask all my guests at the start of the podcast. Obviously, like I said, I from like a distance, I can see that you're a very dedicated individual. You're very focused. You set your goals. You're very goal driven, and you're very hardworking as well. I kind of want to, almost peel back the layers and go back a couple of years. Like, how did that start? How did that behavior or that personality trait start of being such an achiever, being someone who's, very focused and very driven? Was it something, instilled in you from like your parents, or was it something that, you watched when you were like 10 years old, or whatever it was? Because I feel like for a lot of, younger children in general, they almost have like an arc, like a character development arc, where they might be like this at this level, but then someone tells them something, or they experience something. It might be traumatic, or it might be a positive experience, but usually takes them from being just a kid to being someone who's just extraordinary. They just start being driven out of nowhere. So that's where this question is going. Is I want to learn, what made you into this person that you are right now.
So if I was to like clearly delineate when I would like start doing things which are like relevant now for my knowledge, etc., it was that around age 13 or so, I would just like start like reading as many history books as possible and reading The Economist weekly. And that gave me some like very substantial amount of knowledge on like contemporary affairs at the time, with the result that I now have the best model of the late 2018 to 2021 period before I stopped reading current affairs around that point. And I also have like some large number of history books which I can still remember much of from that period.
Oh wow, nice. So I'm guessing history or maybe maths is your favorite subject then?
History was my favorite subject for like 2 or 3 years, maths for another 1 year, and then it's been econ since then.
Nice. Well, for the last question of the podcast, I want to ask sort of a detailed question, but not really, it's very personalized, individual to you. I just want to ask, like, when you're not, studying, or when you're not involved in, writing studies or anything to do academically, what does Duncan do? What do you get up to? Maybe a hobby or something that you do in your spare time. Like for me, I love sleeping. I love playing football. I love actually filming podcasts and stuff. I actually find this almost sort of as a hobby to me. So like, what are your things, something that maybe relaxes you or takes you away from the academic side?
So I really enjoy social deduction games like Avalon or Werewolf, as these are like very interesting to like provide explicit models of in real time and negotiate with other participants.
Okay, nice. Avalon that's the like the combat game, right? Like the medieval.
No, Avalon is a card game where you are essentially like similar in some respects to Werewolf.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I must be thinking of the wrong Avalon then. Well, it's been very nice. I don't want to obviously take up too much of your time. I know you're probably very busy today, so it's been very nice having you on the podcast. And before we go, if you have anything to say, like any words of inspiration for the people watching, just tell them whatever, you feel like comes from the heart and feel like could help them today.
Nothing currently comes to mind.
I can respect that. That's very honest. I can respect that. Well, before we close, do you have any projects coming up that you wanna plug or you want to advertise for the people to go check out maybe a study that's coming out in the future, or maybe you want to advertise your studies that you've written, or maybe any websites or any blogs or anything that you want to tell the people to go check out?
Oh, so my blog is modelthinking.substack.com.
Okay.
That's where we have like several posts on like on modeling intergenerational altruism, how the total quantity of regulations has changed over time, a few other things. That would be quite interesting.
Okay, nice. Well, it was very nice having this conversation with you. I wish you the best in all of your studies. You know, if I have any problems with economics, I'm definitely gonna message you. You know, if you can help me with that, because I feel like you're actually a very great teacher, the way you explain things. And thank you again for coming on the podcast, for being so proactive and being so helpful with actually, you know, spreading some knowledge and spreading your insights on the podcast. You know, if you ever want to come back again in the future, just let me know. Or if you have anyone who wants to come back, let me know. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Duncan, for coming onto the podcast, and I'll see you later. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Nice.